The thing is, like, I love that deck. I want to play that kind of deck. The problem is I don't want to be one of those people that plays that deck.
Mhm.
Is
Hey, I resemble
because
that remark.
Hello and welcome to JudgeCast. This is episode 361. I'm one of your hosts, Bryan, and I am joined this evening, afternoon, morning drive to work by the one and only Charles Feather
Hello, hello.
and the one and only Marco Sanchez.
Hello, everybody.
Yep. All right. In this episode, which is sure to get us tons of YouTube views, we're going to be talking about a very, very narrow topic. Um, every event has a rhythm to it. You pair the round, you post pairings, you start the clock, you maybe do deck checks, and you floor judge. You call time, you make sure all the results are in, you complete the round, and start over. Now, an important part of that process is focusing on the end of things, end of round. And to do that, we have on a very special guest, Mr. Brandon Welch.
Hello.
Hi, Brandon. Hi.
How's it going?
Great. Brandon was head judge of the RC out in Vegas this past weekend. Or not this past weekend. By the time we're recording now, it was 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, 2 weekends ago.
2 weekends ago. All right. So, Brandon, tell us a little bit about yourself, and maybe tell us a little bit if there's anything cool happening in Vegas.
So you heard my name's Brandon. I am a level 4 Judge Foundry judge based out of close to Portland, Oregon. I've been judging since 2013 specifically. Actually, I was talking to Marcus earlier that I learned by listening to JudgeCast, as I was a judge that was not near or isolated from other judges. So I pretty much only had this material to help me get to my L1 back in the day. I also specialize in a couple other different games specifically, and I this last year, as a fun fact, I added up all the events I did this last year, and it was 27 events total, which is the most I've ever done. Likely, I'm
Just
not going to
this
repeat
year?
that. Yes, just this year,
Wow.
and that is a mix between Magic and Flesh and Blood, and a little bit of Star Wars in between, but. I took a little time off this last year to do that, but I'm not going to repeat that, hopefully.
So three
Um,
event type or three IPs. So you're a triple threat then?
yeah, close. I'm more of like a 2.5 threat. I've only done 3 Star Wars, so I've really enjoyed the game though. I play a little bit locally, but most of my stuff is 50-50 between Flesh and Blood and Magic. And then as far as last week, Vegas was intense. It was 1,382 players, so it was the largest split standalone RC. So seeing that number rise a few days before the event definitely made me nervous and more nervous as we got closer to it. But I had an awesome team. We also were plagued by a bunch of people who had to call out.
Oh, yeah.
So we were fairly short-staffed, made things really interesting, especially on the end-around side. But we managed, and it actually, I'd say, besides long turnovers, it was fairly uneventful.
I would be curious because anecdotally, okay, I haven't done any for study, but I feel like events in late November and December have a higher preponderance of call outs than
Yeah,
other events.
Vegas had so many, man.
yeah, it was a mix between, I know, some other late acceptances for some events, but also since SCG Vegas had a lot like bigger events like the 10K Riftbound and I think the Bo Jackson, was it 100K?
What?
It was a
Or no, it was the
sorcery 100K.
100K,
100K, yeah.
Sorcery 100K. And so you have all these other games that are popping up, and they're actually pulling a lot of the talent from Magic, like a lot of the talented judges from Magic, which is good. But when you have callouts, you're kind of at the mercy of whoever you get. Also, the F1 race Grand Prix was that weekend. And I know a lot of people who were hesitant to go because they thought, one, prices in Vegas would be super expensive, and two, they didn't want to have to deal with the race.
All right. So the thing that we're going to talk about this episode is end of round. So what is end of round? Just at a high level.
At a high level, I had one of my mentors tell me that, and I agree with it, is end of round is basically you're trying to prevent any sort of possible delays in the event. A lot of people see it as like you know, getting results in and making sure we flip rounds, but it's more or less trying to get ahead and predict and prevent anything that's going to cause you to have long turnovers.
Okay. Yeah. I mean that kind of answers. I was going to answer the question or ask the question of, well, why do we do end of round? And you kind of answered that in the definition. All right.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that, when you hear a lot of people talk about end of round, they don't see it as a proactive process necessarily. A lot of people will look at it reactively, where they're like, okay, when end of round is when we see how many tables are still playing, and at that point we try to rush them to get to finishing playing as quickly as possible, and then we see we're 15 minutes over on the clock, and then we start panicking, and it's like, no, you can absolutely view and should be viewing end of round as a proactive process for sure.
Yeah, one of the kind of cool things, one of my head judges a long time ago told me that their metric for end of round was the turnover time. And I'm very hesitant to say that is the metric for end of round because, deck checks might go do a 30-minute extension and all of a sudden they use that full time, and that's not end of round's fault. So I think, a good head judge will notice the things that the end of round team is doing to, catch up on certain things and try and prevent things from going downhill.
Yeah, if there's a 15-minute extension that the players use, there's really nothing you can do as end of round lead to make that go faster.
Right. And that's also a tough deal when we're dealing with a format where for whatever reason there's a deck or a couple of decks that just monopolize time and take time at the end. Eggs and Clan Ironworks and whatever else.
Even recently in Vegas. Yes, Amulet Titan, perfect.
Sure.
That was Amulet Titan was our problematic child.
Right. Why isn't the last match done yet? It's Titan player doing Titan things. Yep. Right?
Because they introduced this infinite loop that lets you do a bunch of stuff.
All right. So let's start at something that might be a little bit more relatable and work our way up to large event stuff. So do we have end of round at Friday Night F&M at your Avatar draft?
Oh yeah.
100%. Yeah, easily.
Yeah, so what does end of round look like there?
I do a lot of F&M, so I'll answer this one. For me, it's a prairie dog look. I'm at one end of the room or the other. I pop my head up, I look around, and I see, oh wait, I have 2 matches that are still running. I need to position myself where I can watch both of them at the same time and make sure that we're not causing any delays to the other players who are waiting for the event to move on. That's it. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, the small events, typically you're working by yourself, so there's no need to communicate with anybody. You've generally got access to event links so you can see who has already entered results.
Yep.
So you can look around and say, I've still got 2 players playing. Do I still have 2 matches in event link? Cool. And if there's 3 matches left in the event link and 2 players playing, you can probably go find those missing players because they might be
one's on a smoke break, the other one's in the bathroom or whatever. Yeah.
Hey Jimmy, put in your results.
Right.
Pizza down the street.
So you are doing just in the process of paying attention to your event and announcing end of round and making sure that you've got all the results in when you're doing an end of round process. It's super informal and it can be kind of chill and relaxed because you don't have a lot of people. Okay. But this is a good area at your LGS store to get into a habit of proactively looking for problems so that the last match people have stopped playing and they're, I don't know, playing a commander game off to the side, and someone says, hey, can the next round start? Oh, what? And then you look and you can't because, Bobby didn't put his result in and he went to Taco Bell to go get Chalupa Supreme. I don't know, is that a thing?
Hashtag not sponsored, but we're open to it.
Right. Okay. So what's the next step up from LGS events?
Convention.
Convention stuff, right? So what is how is that different from the store? Like this is where things start getting a little bit bigger and involving and requiring a little more structure.
Yeah, I think there with a convention, you have a few more plates that are spinning, right? You have the possibility of being in charge of not just the one event that you're there for. This isn't just the Friday Night Magic or the new set pre-release. You could be in charge of the 2 p.m. Mystery Booster Sealed and the 3 p.m. Modern and the 4 p.m. Legacy, all at the same time, all of which have different end times for their rounds. And just generally a lot more people that you may have to keep track of. Any one of those events could easily go into over 100 players, which most people don't have the opportunity to experience when they're playing at their LGS. So the number of players that you're working with, typically you'll find at least, 20, 30 players, going all the way up to 80 to 100 or even more, because some of these mystery booster events get really popular. And you're going to have to be coordinating with people. It's not just you on an island. You're part of, for the first time, you're part of a much bigger machine, and you're just a cog in that machine trying to make everything work. And the flip side of that is if you're a cog that is not quite gelling with everything else in that machine, you could actually seriously gum up the works a bit.
Right. End of round again becomes a proactive thing where you're trying to watch out for everything else going on around you. You need to be able to turn your rounds over so that your event ends in a reasonable time frame, because you need you need to free up the table space.
Also, oh, go on.
I was just going to chime on that and say one of the first things I learned, at least from a sides lead, was since you are so far away from the scorekeeper, you don't have, as you said, you don't have the ability to look at event link. You oftentimes, it's good if you're ever going to make a trip up to the stage to proactively look at what tables you have outstanding still, write them down, and then go to the scorekeeper and say, hey, like, I just want to double check. I have 5 outstanding, and when I mean 5 outstanding is 5 matches played. Scorekeeper will either usually give you a face, or they'll say, yep, 5, perfect, and then you can go out there and do the end around process, because you never want to be that side judge who walks up and says, all right, ready to flip in a round 2, and then the scorekeeper goes, you have 3 tables still outstanding, and it's really hard to wrangle the side event players oftentimes because they're off getting, there's cards signed or vendors or other stuff.
Getting their chicken fingers.
And that's where that point right there that Brandon was pointing about is when you suddenly switch into reactive mode, right? Or you should have been proactive, but now you are forced to be reactive. I am missing players and I did not know about it. Whereas you want to be watching as the event winds down. You want to be fully aware. You want to, as players are getting up, hey, did you put your result in? That kind of thing. Because players do have a tendency to just kind of wander. They have a tendency to sit and chat and then forget that someone was supposed to put in a result and then get up and wander off. So, okay. Also, to Charles's point, time is more important because a lot of events, it's not, there is a schedule, and a lot of times, let's say the 12 o'clock modern event is 3 rounds, and there might be a 3:30 or a 4 o'clock modern event. And the reason why that schedule is set up is so that the modern players can go from event to event to event. And if you have to spend 10 extra minutes hunting for a judge, or sorry, not hunting for a judge, hunting for missing players, then in addition to the 5-minute time extension here that goes over and stuff like that, those players might not be done at the noon modern event by the time the 4 o'clock one starts. And that makes TOs unhappy.
Before we leave this, an interesting thing to this to me is, and when you're a judge working one of these events, you're not just end of round. You're the floor judge. You're launching the event. You're turning the rounds over. You're taking all the calls. You're basically the head judge for the event. You should be in most cases. Mm-hmm. So you should be already aware of where you are and around and how things are progressing. You should be aware if you've had, a call that took you for whatever reason 5 or 6 or 7 minutes to resolve. You weren't running deck checks, so you should have no deck check delays, which is great in most of these cases. But you just want to you want to not lose track of the detail. Don't get hyper focused, but keep an idea of the big picture and where you are. If you're halfway through your second round and you took a call and it took 10 minutes, then you know that you've got that at the end of the round to tack on. Try not to make it worse as you're going, right? Don't compound that. If you need help, ask for help. That's the other thing. Even though it's your event, there should be other judges in your immediate area. Don't feel like you have to take every single call. Don't feel like you have to make players wait. But lean on the resources that are provided to you and are available to you.
Okay. Yeah. And Charles, to Charles's point, at these smaller events, or when I say events, tournaments, the end of round process is just a thing you do in addition to everything else. You are the everything. You're posting the pairings. You're, telling the players that they can start. You're announcing the time in round. You're doing all of that stuff. When we get to larger events, though, that starts being other teams start having responsibilities, and you, if you are end of round, start to focus on other stuff. So how does end of round at a very high level start to change when we get to let's just go ahead and make the jump to 1,000-person events, like maybe Vegas?
Segues.
Brandon, how do things start looking different?
I feel like I'm being called out here for this.
Is that a call out?
I feel like it's a call out.
How if we were to just say a 1,332 player event, how's that different?
Wow. 82, thank you.
82. Oh, I'm sorry, 82.
Yeah, you got it. I think after round 1 we had 10 drops, so maybe 72 would be close to that. It comes drastically different because an event of that level, you're compounded by a lot of different factors between, as you said, decks that play too long, super long extensions, because at a competitive level, you start to introduce head judges who like to investigate things or appeals. And sometimes I've seen investigations, take really long and they don't keep track of their time. So you get a long extension anywhere from, 20 minutes to 48 is what I've seen as the longest extension. Yeah.
Did you say 48?
48? Yeah, this was in a Flesh of...
How many minutes are in a round?
In Flesh of Blood, it's 55. So it's either... It might be 43 or 48, but there's a certain friend of mine who did that extension. I'm giving him a little bit of a call out here.
Amazing.
So you have these long extensions that you're just kind of at the mercy with, and you have sometimes technical problems. There's so many things you have that could just cause you to be delayed outside of you just looking at which matches do we have outstanding versus what my software says. So that's kind of where, to put it simply, I have to explain it to people that you can't really experience it until you get put into the end of round position as the team lead to really see the bigger picture and see everything, to be like, oh, now I understand what they say or why they talk about these issues.
It is, yeah, there's, and especially at the larger events, you start running into the 1 in 1,000, type situations. Well, with 10,000, with 1,000 players, the 1 in 1,000 is gonna happen. And so those delays or those problems or those oopsies are going to happen. Now, also, when you get to this larger event, you are no longer capable of just eyeballing the event, right? You're gonna need help. There's so many players, you can't possibly get all of them as they get up and walk off and wander off, right? So
you might think you can, but I promise you cannot.
Yeah. Nope, they throw a smoke bomb and they just disappear. So there is software that we often use to help. We can talk about that a little bit later, but generally speaking, you need help. Okay, so Brandon, can you tell us what is an end of round team and what is its responsibilities?
Okay, so this changes from event to event because a lot of it is based on what the head judge assigns task-wise to I'll just kind of talk about a generic because I think later we'll probably talk about a little bit more of the differences in teams. But basically, You have an end-around team that usually has a larger number of people than most other teams, because I think you want to devote a lot of your resources to that and making that team function and be successful. And the team is kind of responsible for, sometimes they'll be responsible for like starting the clock, are some of the things you'll give them. Basically, you'll give them stuff to do at the beginning of the round, so that once the end of round comes, so 15 minutes, 20 minutes before the end of round, they sort of kick into gear and start getting their job done. And their job is basically to find ghost matches. So if you're unfamiliar with ghost match term, it's basically a match that is still outstanding or playing, quote unquote, in Melee or your tournament software, and you walk to the table and they're just not there. So they did not report. So that's what we consider a ghost match.
The computer thinks they exist,
yes,
but in reality they do not.
It's kind of a byproduct of us switching to electronic, because I'm going to pull up my old man hat, but like back in the day when we, had paper slips, the paper slip was a nice thing that players who, after they won, had to sign to ensure that, they reported that they won. Right, so they had to take this match slip, get it signed 2-1 by their opponent, and then take it up and give it to the scorekeeper. And since we moved away from that, there isn't this physical thing. So players oftentimes will sit there, chat, they'll decide board, and then they'll just be like, "All right, we're done." They'll pack up, and the loser of the loser of the match goes, "Well, it's not my job to report," and then the winner just completely spaces it, and so we have this ghost match that appears. So they'll find ghost matches.
Do you know how we used to handle ghost match? Do you remember how we used to handle ghost matches back in the day?
Sorting through slips.
Sorting through slips.
Sorry.
Yep.
Clipboard. I mean, there's also the clipboard, which is
that's how we did end of round, is on a clipboard. But how we found ghosts.
Sorting through the slips. So you'd sort the slips numerically, and then the scorekeeper would be like, "I need 238." So everyone's just flurrying through.
And the worst was when they couldn't find it in the stack, and then you start going around to every judge in the room, empty your pockets, and if you were the one that had that match slip in your pocket, oh boy,
pocket check.
So what would happen is we would run end of round on a clipboard, which we're not going to talk about how to do it, but you'd send someone out to table 583, and then they'd come back and say, "No one's at 583," and you'd have to circle it and mark it, and then after a minute or so, you'd have someone check. Scorekeeper has 583 came in, because sometimes
the players are
coming in from players around you. Like, you actually had to have another person to like intercept players trying to hand in slips so that we could get them crossed off the list. And then eventually we would have enough evidence that 583 is not in our hands. So then there would be the slips team responsibility to grab the, in some of the large GPs that had like 2,000 players, the 1,000 slips that have already been, and then start looking for 583. Literally needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
Figuratively needle in a haystack.
But they were very good at it and very efficient at it. They would sit there on a table, they'd group it out by centuries and then by decades and sort them quickly, and before you know it, they had the answer. It never really took terribly long. You just have to throw a few people at the problem.
It didn't feel like it took a long time because you were doing something,
right.
But as someone who's on the clipboard waiting, they took a long time.
It took forever.
Yeah. Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So in a very real way, having players record things automatically as opposed to having, or I say automatically, like on in an app, as opposed to messing with paper slips, so much easier. But it's also so much easier because players do not have a physical reminder that they need to do a thing.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
And it happens sometimes that players will submit the results and like they don't hit confirm, like they don't confirm and have it refresh the page and tell them they won or show the result. And so there's a ton of players that are like, "I submitted," and then they.
Yeah. Or convention halls or crowded places with lots of steel and concrete. Sometimes the signal isn't great and it looks like it happened and it didn't. There's tech issues.
Yeah, if there's a 1%, assume a 1% failure rate of which is exceptionally good when talking about humans. Okay,
when you have
that's
1,000
five.
players,
That's 5 matches
rounds.
that didn't get reported.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the rest of their kind of duties after what we call a sweep. So if I refer to a sweep is basically walking through some table range and basically seeing which players are playing versus what is in the software. So you see if they match. If they match and you get to your whole sweep, you have 0 ghosts. Then they turn into kind of very similar. I'm going to use the term clipboard judge. I use that term because basically someone gets stationed up in a spot usually, and every judge at 5 minutes left usually crowds this judge and says, put me somewhere, put me somewhere. And this person's job is to look at what tables are outstanding, and they sort of have this balancing job of, all right, I have these long extensions, I have these short extensions, and I have these tables with no extensions. So I have to see how many tables do I have outstanding. You have to see how many judges you have available. And then you start assigning them to tables a lot of times based on their experience levels. You want to put your strongest judges, like we'll talk later on that, but you want to put your strongest judges on the longer extensions because they're probably likely going to use most of that time. So they're sitting there assigning these judges out to these different tables so that when time is called, the tables with extensions has a judge. Like your goal is hopefully to have all tables with extensions covered by someone. If you
let's talk about that briefly, Brandon. Okay, why is it that, let's say there is a match with a 15-minute extension, okay, and they are still playing now, and I'm going to ask a question that might sound obvious, but it's learning. People are, why do we believe, why are we sending more experienced judges to that particular extension?
For a couple reasons. I think I'm trying to collect in my brain all the checklists and stuff, but basically some of the things are, oftentimes the more experienced judges, one, are better at calling slow play out on people. Now there are some newer judges that are actually really comfortable calling slow play on people, or just cautioning people and telling them to make play. Two, since they're going to use most of the time, you are there to facilitate any sort of questions. So if there is so if you think about it, you're into your extension and then you run into an issue. Having a more experienced judge there to potentially, who knows policy, who knows rules, to be able to answer the question faster can actually give you a lot of extra time. You save a lot of extra time. But you just want a judge there who's readily available, because that's likely the match that's going to take most of the time and is going to be your problematic match. And having someone there to assist the players in any way needed is probably the number one reason.
But let me ask you another question following up with this. Do you always know why there's a 15 or 20 or 30-minute extension?
As a lead, I try to, yes. So that is something I kind of talk about how to get better at end of round is, when you start to see what extensions there are, you start to really wonder, I have no clue about that extension. What is it caused from? And then that can trickle down into a lot of other sort of things like, oh, is it a deck check? Well, why did the deck check take 15 minutes? Hey, head judge, did you know this deck check took 15 minutes? Was there an issue on it? No. Then then the head judge might be like, well, why are these deck checks taking so long? You want to, end of round lead is the best way to put it, of acquiring information from the unknown. So you're just trying to figure out, why is there a long extension? Was it an investigation? Maybe it is a deck check and there was a game loss involved, which is not going to, I don't want to, say that's great, but it oftentimes means it's great for the end of round, because it oftentimes means that they might not use the full time. Because if the person just 2-0 sweeps, you're like, okay, what are every time that I'm in the round lead, I'm always thinking about what are the chances they're going to use this full extension. And there's more I'll go into later, but basically it's that you want to be nosy about all the little extensions that matter. And I mean, ones that are I don't think there's a metric or a number, but a lot of times 6+ minutes, 10+ minutes.
Right. I guess what I'm trying to get to at is I imagine a situation where there's a 15-minute extension or 20-minute extension. Maybe it wasn't a deck check problem. Maybe it was a problem with the players and they had a difficult interaction. I think you'd want to put a more experienced judge on those tables as well, because you want them to not draw things out at the end and be contentious and one player create a more difficult situation than you've already had in that round.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing there that I'd like to emphasize is that the more experienced a judge is, the less time any other issue coming up in the match will take.
Right.
Like if you send a more inexperienced judge, they might get to the same answer as the experienced judge. In fact, they often will. But it won't be as immediate. It won't be as handled as efficiently. They won't know to tell them to continue playing while they handle another thing. Like it's just that experience comes with speed and efficiency in just taking calls in general, which is what that table needs.
And I think he
You're
did
playing
say that
percentages.
too already. Yeah, a little bit.
You're playing
So,
percentages.
Yeah, I'm just trying to drill down on something that probably doesn't need to be drilled down on to the extent.
Okay. What else? What else?
What else? For the team lines, or
Yeah, for the team, like you said, they start sweeping at like 10 minutes. Is there a reason to sweep at 10 versus 5 versus 3?
I usually like to sweep at 15 because my idea is that it doesn't, like, you might have to, like, at 15 there will be more outstanding tables playing than 10, but 15 gives you a nice cushion of time frame to let your sweepers get through that first sweep, because I really put a lot on that first sweep, because the first sweep is how you catch the majority of your ghosts. That's your first time, you haven't checked anything for 35 minutes, right? Or 37 minutes if you're at an RC. And that first, like, you want to get through it. I want to give my sweepers enough time. I usually give them up till hopefully by 5 minutes left is when I want to start doing the, putting people on matches. So I give it at 15, and especially on like Vegas, where we were short staffed to an extent, or our staff is a lot smaller versus the size, and they would start sweeping, and then partly up the row they would get a call into another call, and so they would get sidetracked for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, and that would just take away from their sweeping time. So they finish sweeping, and then by 5, hopefully that first one's done, and then they go into continuous sweeps, or a lot of times they'll just kind of walk around and nudge people. Hey, did you submit your results? I see that you're done. Do you mind putting your results in? They're sort of preventing ghosts from happening. Like, once you start your first sweep, you should be able to, for the most part, keep ghosts from occurring after that.
If I can jump in on that,
Yep.
One thing I love is, like, yes, 100% starting a little earlier with end of round isn't a bad thing by any means. But I think, especially if you find yourself on the end of round team as a judge, one of the better things that you can be doing is just being mindful of when players are getting up from their tables. Because it's just a quick thing of, as you're walking by, you see somebody gathering their things or getting up, and you just double check, hey, did you happen to submit your result in Melee? And the number of times that you'll catch somebody who is about to just poof off into nowhere and just become one of these problematic situations you have to deal with later is huge. So just like a quick ask, double checking as they're getting up makes your job later that much easier. And again, prevention and proactivity helps that a lot.
So players, if for the players who are listening to this, if you're like, man, I went to these events and the judge was really on my butt about getting in the result, that's why, is because we've learned that if we leave you to your own devices, some percentage of you, enough of a percentage of you, are not going to put your result in. And so rather than paging you 5 to 10 minutes from now, let's just ask the question right at the table.
One of the things that's very shocking is that players who play at competitive events they're almost trained now when they look at the clock and go, oh, it's 10 minutes left or whatever. And a judge comes up with their phone out looking at it, and they go, oh, I'm submitting it right now. I've seen that happen more often now. They're learning.
Yeah. But then you actually have to stay there, because half the time they'll go back to like the post-match debrief with their opponent and talk about all their sideboarding choices, and you'll just be standing there for like a good minute over their shoulder. They thought you've gone already. They turn around to see you and go, oh, right, and just like pull out their phone again.
So I have a question for you then. So me as a judge, why can't I just submit the result of a match into Melee since I have it right in front of me?
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, the number one question when I come up and I go, who won? And the player goes, I did. And it's just like, I don't know who that is,
Oh, my answer to that is always, okay, and who is I?
Yeah. And you are. Right. Yeah.
Go on. one of the tips I remember adopting from the paper slip days is whenever you would pick up a slip, or if you do end up submitting a result or whatever, if you want to confirm it, it was saying the name out loud of like Jimmy 2-1, Jimmy 2-1, right? Yes, and they'll confirm it. It only gets awkward when you hit, Jimmy and Jimmy. That's then you get a laugh out of it.
So to answer your question, since you posed it to us, there are a few reasons why judges don't want to put the result in Melee. Okay, the first reason they don't want to put the result into Melee might actually be they can't, meaning the settings in Melee have not been set up so that judges can actually enter certain scorekeeper type functions. Okay, that is when you have, just like we've been talking about, like when you get a large number of players, you get some number of oopsies where the players just wander off and do things. You can get when you have a lot of judges and they all have access to scorekeeper-esque functionality in the tool. Sometimes things happen that you don't know why, because someone, pocket dialed a result in Melee on their phone. So some head judges just won't give access because of problems. The second reason, yeah, go on.
I'm sorry. I think another one, and I don't even know if this is still true anymore. It might still be, but there's also potentially a thing that happens within certain software. I think Melee is the culprit for this one particularly, that if you're the last match out and a judge enters it, I've heard that it can brick the processing or the calculating of standings for some reason. Now, this could be an old bug that has already been taken care of. I really hope it is, but sometimes just you don't want any glitches to pop up from your intervention.
Yeah. Right. And the other reason that Brandon was kind of alluding to was when the judge enters the result, the judge is inserting themselves, they become an error vector.
Mm-hmm.
If they put something in wrong, it's not going to be detected because the players aren't necessarily doing it. So if you do have the ability to enter in and you put it in, be sure to show it to the players and have them confirm it, that this is the result.
And there's also an element of like training of your players as well. You want players to be comfortable and be used to using Melee and learning how to do this on their own, because they cannot always rely on a judge to enter their results. They are enabled to do so through the software that you have. And if you keep doing it for them, they're just going to expect you to do it all the time. And that just slows down your event even more.
There was a learning process when we first started converting over to using Melee, where I think judges were more instrumental in this process. I think players have gotten a lot better over time. We still have, of course, the ghost matches, but they're less likely to rely on judges to enter the data unless they're having some issue with their own particular electronic devices. Happens.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, but also like a new game coming out, like, for example, but going back to Vegas, there was the Riftbound 10K that I happen to be the head judge of, and a lot of those players had never seen Melee before and had no idea what to do with it. So that adds a whole other layer of complication. And as more games keep popping up and doing their thing, you're going to encounter a lot of those similar issues. And that element of training of players is still valid, especially with newer games.
All right, Brandon, I got a question for you. Let's assuming that you are end of round lead, you have 4 judges on your team and 16 judges total on staff. Time is called in round. There are 50 matches delinquent. I'm not going to call them outstanding. There's nothing outstanding about them. They're delinquent. We have 50 delinquent matches. Okay.
Oh, wow.
They are in fact delinquents.
Yes. How do you start with the you have more delinquent matches than you have judges. How do you prioritize that?
Okay, so a lot of times, like I said, is based on how I set up my team. So my general rule of thumb is I usually have one judge for every 500 to 600 as the quote unquote clipboard judge or person that is telling people to go somewhere. You don't need that many of these people, because imagine 16 judges all free and ready to go sit on a table. You only need one person to facilitate that. And I usually will have 2 to 3, sometimes 4 sweep. It depends on the size of the event, but I'll have 2 or 3 of my team doing continuous sweeps. So they're going to sweep and they're going to keep pestering players and being annoying to players until they submit the results. Until the point where the number of tables is roughly equivalent to the number of judges we have. So with the 50 tables out, we have a couple people still sweeping, and a lot of times they'll take care of the ones with 0 extension. Then, if we have, 10 tables with extensions, hopefully by 0, those are all covered, because at that point, the judge can then say, all right, you guys have a 4-minute extension. I'll let you know when that 4-minute extension is done. And sometimes we might keep 1 or 2 to kind of throw wherever we need if we need their help. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's even do this. Okay. There's 50 tables out. Okay. Judge comes up to you, on the paper team, and they go, "Where do you want me?"
Okay.
What's your thought process?
So my thought process always goes, one, I'm not calling through people, but basically, how semi-experienced is this person? When do they come up? So are all my time extensions for the most part covered? If they're anything that's like 2 or 3 minutes, I'm fine with sending most people out there. There's no real what I mean by experienced judges, generally like on those 10-minute long extensions. So I'll generally go from the top down. So try to prioritize the long extensions as best I can as I go down this list, and then keep going until you basically hit to the tables that are at 0. I will oftentimes prioritize clumps. So if there are 2 tables near each other, this is a cool little trick you can do of, oh, hey, table 33, 38, and 41 are all near each other. Can you go out there and watch over them? At some point, you'll probably send out another person to take one of those tables from them. But what I really care about is having judges nearby when time is called, because when time is called, there are many times where a player or the players in the match just don't hear it. I've gone through sweeping, and I walk up and say, hey, what turn are you guys on? And the players go, wait, time is called? Yeah. And it's 7 minutes past. So
yeah, that's the nightmare scenario.
Yes. So just having somebody nearby to even call time on the matches that don't have an extension is really important. So I'll start clumping people up fairly early on matches that are within like a 2-row kind of plus or minus of them. So they can just kind of take a sec to get up and say, hey, are you in turns? Are you in turns? Because most of the time when players get into turns, they kind of facilitate themselves, but you're still nearby in case there's problems. So it's extension priority that are based on experience. Get most of your extensions covered if you can. If not, doing clumps. And then once we get to a certain point, you start to double up. You want to get into double upping?
Sure.
Okay.
Go for it.
So double up. So you double up on a table by sending another judge out to a table that already has a judge on it. And the idea is that it's good for purposes of if you need like approval or double check a call, someone's there. Oftentimes the double up might be a head judge, but that's for later. Basically, we want to put 2 judges on a table so that if there is someone who might have a hard time with calling cautions for slow play, you might put someone with them that's more experienced to kind of be there to support them. So just because this other person's coming into the match doesn't completely rid the first person who showed up of all their responsibilities, right? Like I really want to make it clear that if you're the first person on the match, you're there till the end, unless like someone actually comes over and like taps you on the shoulder and say, hey, I'm here to replace you. So we want to double up just to kind of support each other. And then we pretty much ride that out for the last, 10 or so tables. And then at some point, when we get down to the last few, we actually send out the head judges. We send out the head judges on the last few tables to once again stress the importance
the head judges.
Yeah, deploy. Yeah, it's true. So if a head judge ever asks you which table do you want me to sit on, and there's still like 20 judges or 20 matches out, tell them to wait. You get to be the boss of them. That's the nice thing about it around. You get to be the bosses of them.
That brings up an interesting point, actually. When you're at end of round and you're the end of round team lead and you're overseeing all this, you're kind of king of the round at that point, right? You're the one that's making these decisions. When you're doing this, you have to be really focused. You'll have people asking you questions. You'll have judges asking where to be deployed. But who else might want information from you? What kind of information might they want from you? Would stage want information? Would a head judge want information? What kind of things are you being asked, and what do you have to be mindful of?
Yeah, so my general rule of thumb for me specifically, if I'm in end around, regardless of how the configuration is I make sure that I'm not tied down to some duty. So I think it's really important for a lead to give opportunities to their other people, right? Delegate. So I always put someone else as the little clipboard person. I always have other people sweeping. I never put myself locked down on a task because I want to be fluid to be able to help assist things, confirming a ghost, to call ghosts sometimes, but basically, and to also acquire information. So, as you mentioned, a lot of times the head judges want this information. So, even though they can look at Purple Fox or Melee and they can get this information, they might not have the bigger picture. And you can give a sort of TLDR of, hey, all the extensions are covered. So, you might look at Purple Fox next to the Clipper person, and you might ask the Clipper person, hey, who do you have out on table 19 with the plus 10? Oftentimes they should note these down on either like a notebook or some softwares have the ability to assign people to the table. So if you were to highlight over it, it'll effectively say Bryan Perlman is judging at that table. And knowing who's on what match helps dictate, do I need to double up with B Pro at some point? At some point, yes, but I could I can let him ride that table out solo for a while. So I might convey that to the head judges. Okay, I got 5 extensions over 10 minutes. They have B Prill, Marcos, and Charles all on, 3 of the 5 matches, and then these other 2 very experienced judges are on those matches. And, they're all doubled up. You might have information like, hey, there's an ongoing investigation because Provo Fox doesn't, or Melee doesn't have like a tracker. They don't have a clock for each match where, when there's a call, they sort of hit a button that stops it. So you can see ongoing problems, right? So you might notice at the end, that's part of my job, is to walk around and see like, hey, well, why is there an orange or red shirt? Sorry, I use orange because Fab is orange. For the head judges, I might say like, why is there a red shirt over at table 30 when I didn't assign them to that table? So you might walk over and realize that there's an investigation. So the first thing I want to figure out is, are we in time? Do they have any more time? Are they interns? Where are they at? What's this result going to be? Like, is it a policy question, rules question, investigation? Because if it's an investigation, I can then take that information to the head judge and say, hey, 30 has an investigation with Abe and they're, neck deep and this is going to be a long extension. Because oftentimes as a head judge, you're not down you're not down in the trenches obtaining this information. So as a lead, it's important for me to relay that information to the head judges and oftentimes to the other team leads.
And I want to stop there, Brandon, because you actually had a very important lesson in there that was not directly end of round, is more of a team lead thing. You talked about delegating responsibility so that you are free to do things. Now, something that separates, and this is just generic team lead, the thing that separates like mediocre team leads from exceptional team leads when delegating things is still staying engaged, still staying connected, as opposed to everything's taken care of and you kind of get to disassociate and disconnect. And if you notice, what Brandon was talking about was he was constantly interfacing with the other judges to find out the reasons, communicating things, staying engaged, and not just, I've delegated all my responsibilities, I can kind of,
check out.
I don't want to say fart around, but yeah, I can disassociate slightly. And so I just wanted to highlight that.
One of the kind of another points off of that is that it's something you're not going to be really, like, I could sit here and tell you, I could tell you everything you need to tell the head judge and the information you need to acquire, but until you get put into the position, you're probably going to keep it fairly simple. And oftentimes the head judge also dictates what information they actually want. Some head judges they want to know everything that's going on, and some head judges are a lot more lax and kind of just let you do your thing and don't need this information predominantly.
Yeah. Some are, let's see how to phrase it. Some want the information so that they can form a picture, and some are more, the only match that matters is the last one.
Yeah.
Those are kind of two extremes, and a lot of people fall in the middle somewhere. But okay, so about a year and a half ago, we did an episode on taking a judge call, and we ended up talking about 40 minutes before we actually got to the table on how to take a judge call, like tips and tricks, kind of long.
Yeah.
So
Sounds okay.
so now I'm going to segue into, okay, the clipboard judge, or the iPad judge, or the more and more just the on their phone judge, tells you, Mr. and Mrs. Floor Judge, to go to table 41. What are you doing? What do you do?
Oh, I wanted to ask this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I stare at them and have no clue what they're saying. No. If I'm assigned to 41,
Honestly, sometimes that does happen.
it does. Or they walk in the wrong direction because they have no clue as to how the table
No,
number
that way.
Yeah.
Snake goes that way. Snake goes that way.
One thing about end around you get really good at is you start to understand the layout of the room.
It's like
So,
Neo in
table-
the Matrix.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
So one thing I always tell my people to do before they give that is they say table 41 has a +8. You always want to say what extension they have going into it so they know, oh, okay, it's got an extension. So they go to the table, and the first thing that I generally like them to do is to, if you're using Purple Fox, is hopefully you know how to, but you can assign yourself to the table. In Melee, you can, or the person who is doing it around can also assign them. But we basically just want to know, hopefully, that you're the person that's sitting on that match. Sometimes they'll just, like I said, use a notepad and they'll write it down. So you're going to sit on the match and you are there. And I like to say, watch Magic, have fun with them. Like, just basically get yourself involved. So look at, what are the matchups? Does this look like it's good? Start asking questions like, does it look like this is going to go to time? How is the atmosphere? Like, is it, or the atmosphere? How's the mood?
What's the vibe like? Okay.
What's the vibes? The vibes, yeah. That is a game. We can't use vibes anymore. No, we can.
If
But
they're
basically,
interns, you
We
want to
don't
know.
use clipboards anymore, and we still say clipboard.
So just get a sense of what's.
Yeah, if they're interns, you want to know what turn they're in when you get there. You want to find that out quickly. If they're not interns and they have the time extension, when it does come time to the end of their round, you as the judge sitting on that table want to remind them, hey, you are now interns. That becomes your responsibility when you get there.
Do that a little bit earlier. Like if you approach the table and let's say there's like 20 seconds left on the round and you walk up there, just a reminder you have an 8-minute extension.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And remind them to keep playing.
Yeah. You don't want them to go into turns if they're not supposed to.
Right.
One of the things to enhance on the time extension is I learned this from somebody because I saw them do it, and I really appreciate when judges do this. I think it's a little thing we can do as a customer service thing to the players is a lot of times when we're down to the last few tables, the sea of players is standing up and they make great pillars in front of clocks. You oftentimes might have the clock in Purple Fox that you can see. So what I've learned to do is I'll just pull out a little timer and I'll like hit, all right, 7 minutes and 7 minutes now. And I'll actually throw my phone like basically right between the players off to the side. So they have a ticking number going down so that they're not sitting there having to like look over people, or they'll constantly ask you, how much time do you have? How much time do you have? How much time do you have?
That's why I do the show, so I can learn new things myself. That's a neat idea.
The players love it. I've done it every single time, and every single time I do it, a judge sees it and goes, oh, that's really neat. And I think it's a great thing. So I like to do that. You also are there to assist them. This kind of goes into if you are going to end up in a draw, especially in situations where a draw is sort of doomed for both players because they can't make day two. You're kind of there to prevent any sort of bad things from happening. And so it's easier for you to jump on that sword preemptively than it is to let the players kind of like, dig their own grave. So if they start doing there's a whole plethora of things you can do to facilitate this and help with this, customer service wise. But you being there is there to make sure that no player feels bullied into a concession, or if someone is starting to get down the line, you can sort of interrupt them and say, hey, like, seems clear that no one's going to concede here. This looks like a draw, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if anyone else has any extra points on this, but
Yeah, you want to be watching when we say watching, like the whole point of sending a judge there is to make sure that that game finishes as quickly as possible. And what we mean by that is not that you're standing over them with like whips and a stopwatch, okay? But if they have a question of, did I already play a land this turn? You're boom, yes you did. Okay, as opposed to, I don't know, let's argue about it for 35, 40 seconds and then call a judge and then have them come over and then do an investigation in counting lands and stuff like that. It's, you are there not to, like, you can sit down, but not to sit down and like check Facebook, okay?
yeah.
Take a little sitsy downsy break. No, you need to be paying attention. You need to check, make sure that the life totals are there. You are there so that if there is a problem, you can be boom, solution.
What game are they in is another one. I also like to say that having a judge there when players go to time is important, because some players might not actually know what the end-of-turn procedure is.
Yep.
Especially with sudden death. Every single time you do a sudden death single elimination event, I think it's very important that any judge who sits down at a match and time is called, I always say, do you both understand how sudden death works? What game are we in? 3? Do you both understand how sudden death works? Because I've had too many times where players like, I didn't know how it worked and the judge didn't explain it. I got robbed of a win. Because they're playing for the win and not playing for the highest life total. So kind of a extra little thing is always ask the players, do you guys both understand how this works, especially if it goes to a draw?
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that kind of to jump back on, like, why head judges go to the last few tables. What I was saying was, you know, if there is a question of, did I play a land this turn, you know, the judge who was right there watching, boom. When you get down to 2 or 3 matches left and the red shirts go, or the head judges go, or the orange shirts, or whatever, this is fab, that's because if there is an appeal, boom, head judge, just, you know, lightning bolt strikes, head judge there, and there might not even need to be like a whole lot of turnover time or discussion because the head judge was right there watching. All right, so it's all about reducing the being proactive, as Brandon said in the beginning, being proactive and setting yourself up so that little delays can't become big ones.
And little things about once you're sent off. I've seen this kind of mix up happen in the past, and I think it's part of what inspired this episode even, is that when you're sent by the point person, because some end of round point people who are assigned to be the clipboard judge may just assume that everybody knows what is expected of them, that all of these things that we're discussing are what is expected of them. And sometimes, especially if it's one of your first events and you haven't been doing this for very long, you might just go, oh, okay, go check on table 54. Cool, la la la, walk over 54. Yep, that's 54. And then just walk off and look for other things to do. And then when they start looking around for, okay, what's the status on 54? Well, I sent Billy to go over there. Hey, where's Billy? Not at that table, and we have no idea where they're at, and they should have been in turns by now. What's going on? So it's important to not only be clear with the players about what your expectations are of them, but if you end up in that point position or even just being sent off to do the thing, it's important to make sure you clarify what is expected of you, or if you are not sure what it means to go sit on this match and do a thing or double up on this match, be aware of what that means.
He said doubling up. Can you triple up? Quadruple up? What point does it get too crazy?
More than 2 judges at a table. Ooh, I want to mosh pit a table now. Can we just start like doing a big circle of judges running around a table that is the last match out?
You play music over the intercom? Right.
Your next event, sure. Go for it.
Oh, sure,
Go
put it
for
on me. Okay.
Well, I mean, like if it's my event, then no. But if it's your event, yeah, go for it.
Well, nobody else
Absolutely.
is jumping up and volunteering
And
for
now I
this.
want to see Abe Corson just crowd surfing.
Yeah. So here's the thing, players. There is a non-trivial number of players that get nervous when a judge is
Yeah.
basically hovering over their shoulder watching. Okay.
Yeah.
And then a second judge, even sitting next to them just watching, there's a little bit of like, I don't know, like black shirt hypertension, even though we don't wear black shirts anymore. Where they get a little bit nervous. But now, what if there's 3 or 4, or one of them's there's 4 in a red shirt, just like basically breathing down your neck, just like screaming with their eyes for you to hurry up. Okay, that makes players kind of nervous, and this is a customer service role, so let's not bully the players with our presence.
Right. Even though technically end of round is kind of bullying players with our presence, there is a line, and that line is generally 2 judges worth.
It's polite bullying. We'll talk
It
about
is, yeah.
some tricks to politely bully in just a minute. But okay, so players have finished. Okay, they're done.
Yay.
So great, they're done. They finished. They shook hands. Matched over. You can get up and go somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gone.
Yeah,
Poof.
they're done. They're going to turn in their results.
Yeah, they're totally gonna remember to turn in that result.
Yep. Not the reason why we have this team at all.
No, you were like, you do not leave until you see them enter the result.
You'll see them even on the Melee page. You'll even see them tap on the games that they won. But until they hit that submit and confirm button, you don't move.
The worst is when they pull out right away and they push things, and then while it's in their hand, they just start talking and gesturing and just waving their phone around, and you're just like, please, just release me, free me, free me.
I know some judges will say, like, I've also said this too, it's like, I'm not leaving here until you submit your results. So, the faster you submit it, I get out of your hair.
Yeah.
It's more of a joke out of it.
It is, and players do like to talk. So let's talk a little bit about how much pressure you should apply as a judge. The match is over. The match is over. You need that result.
Can I tell a personal story?
Yeah,
Can I
go
share
for it.
Okay, so this is 7-8 years ago. This is an SCG event. I was sent to a table for end of round. I witnessed the 2 players finish their match, and then they start talking. And I say, could you please sign your match slip? Because it was match slips then, but the story's the same. And they kind of ignored me and continued to talk. I knew one of the players and who they were. The other player was very interested in getting that player's opinion because that player was a very well-known up-and-coming pro player at the time. They wanted, to find out what lines of play they had made a mistake on, and the conversation was very engaging, and they were both very deliberately ignoring me. So I asked again, hey, could you please fill out your match slip? Very nicely. Nobody did anything. So instead of raising my voice, instead of doing something weird, I took the match slip and I repositioned my body slightly so I was slightly more into their field of view. And I took it, I placed it right in between the 2 of them and said, players, I need you to fill this out now, please. You just have to, sometimes you have to do something to help call attention to the act that you need them to finish this. It's not a big deal.
One of my reviews, this was a sentence I'll never forget, was just, it said, Bryan has a way of asking for a match slip that makes it clear that it's not a request.
Yes.
And it was just...
That's literally what I did, was I made it no longer a request because I needed to get that slip in. I didn't care that this player wanted to ask Reed Duke 1,000 questions.
My thing when it was match slips, it was like, I'll take that slip up if it's ready to go.
I miss that so
and then
much.
Just stand there and look at them. But yet now it's not only, however, here's the thing. Now, if it's 2 players that are, deliberately ignoring you or chatting up and having a good time and just basically being jovial, like the mood at the table is good. They're just ignoring you. That's one thing that you can just step in and be like, no, I need to get that match. But there's also like the soul crushing defeats where someone thought they had it and then they lost at the last second, or they got blown out or whatever, and they got their buddies around them and they don't make day 2 because of it, or they don't make top 8 or whatever, and they're just crushed. And now you've got to, as a judge, you got to give them a little bit of time. And how much time that is going to depend. But you do not want to just immediately after this soul-crushing defeat be like, hey, I need that result. I need, take a little bit of time to be a human in those situations. Not a lot of time, but a little bit of time to be a human and allow some empathy before you get in there. So definitely read the mood of the table. The happier the players are, the more of a jerk you can be.
Yeah, especially because for me, what I try to get in at is I try to get under all the post match chatter, because it's gonna happen inevitably. And I'm like, hey, if you just do this one thing, I'll leave you alone and you can just chat away, knock yourself out, talk over everything you want, but I just need you to do this one thing for me, please and thank you. So like as soon as the match is officially over and they reach out the fist bump or the handshake or like you got me, whatever, I go, cool, can the winner please report the match result into Melee? And then I just like start getting up, but then I just start looking at them like who's doing it and see what happens from there.
And so here's a very realistic thing. If you've got Purple Fox on your phone or Melee and you can see how many matches are delinquent, if there's 15 other matches that are delinquent and they're all covered by judges, you can actually afford 5 to 10 to maybe even 15 seconds. All right, you're not leaving until you get that result, but you don't have to jump in immediately. So you do have a little bit of flexibility, and that's a little bit of a thing that you want to learn how assertive to be. And again, vibes, not the game. It's like a little mini game in this tournament, though. Okay, so let's say, and Brandon, I'm gonna ask you this. All right, you're sitting on a table, and it's a winning in day 2, and it's game 3, and it's looking like it's gonna be a draw. And then players start that conversation about who boards. They're not doing anything illegal by flipping over cards or anything, but they're having that conversation trying to argue who should scoop to who.
Yeah. So this is something I've developed my own procedure for it, and every judge handles it differently. I am very frontal with the information, including saying stuff like, you guys have some small amount of time to say why you think you can win this match, but please don't do things like revealing cards off the top of the library. But you can show each other's hands. You can discuss anything about how you would play out the next few turns. But ultimately, I'll give you a little bit of time, and then in like Flesh and Blood, they have stricter rules on concessions. So I'm a little bit more strict with them because you can't ask for a concession, but you can concede at certain points. It's kind of difficult, but basically I go, I'm going to ask you after 30 seconds, so let them talk. I'm like, all right, would you like to concede? No. Would you like to concede? No. Before I, say this match is draw, would either of you like to concede? Sort of just take the reins, close it off, and end the match after a minute. But, you can give them some time to talk about stuff. This is totally legal. You just prevent them from doing anything hopefully bad. And then at some point, if things start to get to badgering or players are not making progress, because they'll sit there and do this loop of, well, I was going to do this. Well, I was going to do this. I don't think you're going to do this. You're going to do this. And they'll go down, the webbing of 50 different decisions. And you just basically end it and say, all right, looks like we have a draw. And you end it there. Yeah.
And the amount of time I let them argue is directly inversely proportionate to the number of tables left. Or no, not inversely. It's directly proportional to the number of tables left.
That's true.
Yeah. Yep. If you are the last table, hey, guys, it's a draw. Give me that result, yo. Okay. So let me ask this. The last match, as rounds are turned super fast now, so the last match is in, what happens?
So normally has been reported. Or okay, so what would happen? Like I'll use the RC as an example. Was last match would come in. You inform the scorekeeper. Scorekeeper flips and it has to calculate standings because melee sometimes takes a little bit. It goes into the next round. You tell them to publish it. They publish pairings. You make the announcement. Oftentimes features will take some time to be digging through. Sometimes you may not make the pairings live until features have had like a minute head start. It just depends, but usually like SEG coverage is really good about giving you matches right when they're published, right when you flip into the next round. People start finding their next seats for the next round. I think that's everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Reset your clock.
those players, we can often flip the round and post pairings before that last match is done packing up.
Yeah.
Yep.
And almost guaranteed that one or both of them is going to need to go to the bathroom.
Every single time.
Right? And they're like, oh, well, I feel so rushed. And it's like, guy, we're 20 minutes over.
It's probably acceptable if they want like a minute just to kind of, decompress, especially after a stressful situation or something. So you can give them a little bit of time.
Yeah.
An extension.
The again, vibes-based empathy. No. But yeah, they're probably going to need to go to the bathroom, so that information might need to carry over into next round. So, my name is Brandon or whatever. Okay, so we've mentioned Purple Fox and Melee a few times. What are those?
Okay, so I'll try to keep it so Melee is the software that is used to run most Magic events outside of like companion or Event Link. So if you ever have
large competitive events,
large competitive events is usually done through Melee, which is a web browser based tournament software. Purple Fox is a third party, so it's an independent person. I believe her name is Airly.
Yes.
European scorekeeper made the software, I believe, around COVID time when match slips, when the digital age was kind of coming in at thing. Basically, the software is it's a UI that's browser based, and it has a bunch of squares that represent the tables, and you can color code them. So it's really easy to parse information and see the status of these tables because they are marked as red, yellow, and green specifically. They each have meaning to each of the colors. But basically, it's a tool to help you do end of round, but also it allows you to put time extensions in. So it's a repository for time extensions. It also lets you put penalties in, and it gives judges access to something they can use without giving everyone Melee access. Now, you can run your end around in Melee. It just has a different UI. They both have their pros and cons. There's always a lot of debate on which method is better to use and on what number of players, and should we use it at all. There are optimizations on each end. That kind of answers that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the great advantages of it is or it has APIs where data can be pushed from Melee to Purple Fox, but not necessarily things that you do in Purple Fox don't necessarily translate and go into Melee. So it's very much like you as a judge, if you oopsie mess something up, it's very easy to detect and fix, and doesn't actually impact the event, which is one of the big advantages of Purple Fox. Yes. Yeah. One of the disadvantages of it is it is independently owned. You have to contact the owner or a few of the admins. You basically have to know who to contact to get them to create an event and set it up for you.
Yep. There's a lot.
So it is not something that you will see outside of Purple Fox. Is not something that you will see outside of the very large events.
It also has a lot more learning to it specifically. There's a lot of things, as you said, you have to know how to get something set up. You got to know how to get it all set up to the event. And there's a lot of things you have a lot more ability to do things that could break the software, Purple Fox specifically. So there's a lot more needs and steps.
I don't use either very often because I don't work enough large events, but I do know that both of them are easy enough to learn in the moment. when you first work your large event and you end up on a team and you end up having to use either Purple Fox or Melee. Just if you're listening to this for the first time, make sure you ask somebody who has worked with it recently to show you the ropes. It should only take a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like Purple Fox over Melee just because it works better on mobile. It's more readable.
Yes, that is. I did Melee on the DC RC, which was like 1,800 players, and some of the complaints were I had to take the number of columns down to literally just 3, which was just table number. The player names were gone, extensions, and then the drop down to where I could assign someone.
The player side of Melee is, while not optimized for mobile, is usable for mobile. The judge side or scorekeeper side of Melee is basically desktop only. Yeah. It's very difficult to use on mobile.
Yeah,
can be rough, yeah.
I do know they do plan to come out with a Purple Fox-esque style UI for end of round. Oh. I don't know when it's going to come out, but I heard it's in the works, and it's probably similar, because that's one of the things that is hard with Melee, as you said, is it's hard to parse the information and get all the information you need without having to like scroll down all the bottom and scroll to the left and the right and have it bounce around and refresh. I mean, it has the perk that it's live, right? The data is live in your hands.
All right. So that's mostly, there's a few other things that we want to talk about, like little quick hits in a bit. But Brandon, you have some sections in here where you want to talk about how judges can improve at end of round.
Yeah. So
specifically, this is large event end of round, right?
Yeah. This is aimed specifically at, like, these are the things that I would try to tell a new team lead going into end of round to learn or hopefully have in mind, and it should make their experience a little bit better, because a lot of the head judges put a lot of pressure on the end of round lead, and this is sort of the position that we give people who are trialing to, make that staircase up to an SJ or a support judge, or maybe like a 5K, 10K head judge, right? Like it is a position you have a lot of responsibility in, and you really make or break how well the event goes. So I usually tell them to really learn the software they are using. You sometimes might not be able to dictate which software we are going to be using, because as said, I generally like Purple Fox. I know some people that don't like Purple Fox. It's fine. And if I have a head judge that tells me they want to use Melee, great, I will use Melee. I think it's really important to, if you have the ability to try one or the other, and then for another event use the other, you should do so. I would say it's only really necessary to use these when you have 400 people or above. I think it's really important to understand what end of round is and how it works. Back in the old days with like the paper, basically just understanding what end of round is. And then you use these electronic tools to enhance your ability to perform end of round. So Purple Fox, for instance, has the ability to, most judges can step in and they can assign themselves to tables. They can mark it red, yellow, green. They can do all that stuff. But as a team lead, you're going to have more capabilities. You have the ability to actually take results from Melee and import those into Purple Fox. So being able to know how to do that is really important, because you can take a lot of stress off the scorekeeper, because normally back in the day, the scorekeeper had to use a plugin, a browser plugin, to import those results. But Airly has made a functionality with Melee, which if you never set it up, it takes a little bit to learn how to set it up. And now you can do it from your fingertips on the floor with your phone, and knowing how to fix a situation in case you import the wrong round of pairings. Because it happens. When all the tables go green, all of a sudden you start to, kind of go, oh no. So understanding the software. Yeah, I have a great story I tell from a presentation. Was my first time into round leading post-COVID was at a Flesh and Blood event. And Flesh and Blood specifically only uses Purple Fox because the software used by the game didn't have judge access at the time, which means we needed some ability to import, results from this thing that they can't see into something they can see. So by round 3, it was not going great. And the head judge asked me, hey, have you talked to your scorekeeper about the end around process. And my response was, why do I need to talk to the scorekeeper? And I then got a look because she asked me originally, hey, do you know how to use Profox? And I said, yeah, of course I do. I've used it as a floor judge. And that's the day I learned that it could take results from, independent software and import them into Profox. And that blew my mind. Like, so talking to other people who have ran end around. There's other methods besides mailing Profox. There is the emoji method, which I tried years ago. There's a couple different methods.
The emoji method?
I knew you were going to ask this. Yeah. TLDR was once you get it down to a certain number of tables, so like 20 to 25 outstanding tables, someone would have the Melee open and another person would have Discord open. You'd have an end around Discord channel, and the person would recite all the tables, and so the person would type them all in individual lines, and then you would go sweep, and then you'd use emojis to denote, like, little ghost would be, a ghost. Time would be, it has a time extension, so usually it'd have like 23 plus 4. So you have time extension.
So we don't do this anymore, right?
This sounds like
do this
anymore,
right?
Post-pandemic.
I tried it, and
This is just Purple Fox with extra steps.
This is just extra steps.
The problem is you can't start until like 2 minutes left on the clock is the problem.
I straight up
I would rather
just
clipboard.
give me on paper. Right, we're doing this on paper.
Right.
Yeah,
that's what we did. We transitioned to paper where we just walked around and wrote down all the numbers.
Round two, give me a clipboard.
Okay.
So, understanding Purple Fox is great, but also within Purple Fox, I have 7 different ways on how you sweep and how you mark things in Purple Fox. Because there's a lot of different things you could do with, do you mark everything plain before you sweep or after you sweep? Like do you mark the tables red or do you mark the tables green? Like there's a bunch of different sweep techniques, procedural wise. And so knowing which one works best for you. I have one that I use that I think, is kind of trial and error has gotten me to what I think is my favorite. But I've ran into people that dislike it. So each end around lead is going to have a certain way they're going to do it.
Judges have opinions about things that they feel strong about. Perish the thought. But here's an important thing that I want to take away that Brandon said. If you are on the end of round team or maybe being a team lead and you've used software before and something about it has just worked, okay, that's great. It might have just worked from your perspective, but there is someone on the other end of that is doing that thing that worked. So if you get put into a lead role or maybe a scorekeeper role, that thing that just worked might now suddenly become your responsibility. Okay, think about like a clock at a large event when you're judging. Those clocks just start. Someone is starting those. And you know what? That might actually just be your responsibility now because based on the team that you joined. So definitely, if you don't know how a thing works, and it might be your response, ask.
At some point, you become the man behind the curtain.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
I think that answers the question for at least the Melee or like software. You're going to just learn by talking to people is honestly the best thing to do.
Now you've got a note here that says, learn to predict what's going to be your longest delay in relaying information to the head judge. Elaborate on that.
Oh,
give me that.
Skipping over communication. No.
Well, we can do
it. So learning to predict what's going on. So we kind of hinted at it throughout the episode of what I mean by learning to predict things, specifically for the longest delay, is like getting information on the longest match, like to basically predict what do I think the longest match is going to be, not just based on the time extension. Because you might go out there when we had, the grinding breach mirrors, you might go out there and say, hey, out of the 5 tables, is any of them grinding breach? And you might find out that one of them is the mirror match, which will take longer than a 20-minute extension. So knowing that sort of information, so, what's the decks involved? Do you believe that that match is going to use all 20 minutes of their extension? Oh, is there an active investigation? Is there something that, you're all of a sudden going to find out that there's a 25-minute extension that pops up out of nowhere? Are you able to see that, predict it, and get the information needed, so you can relay it to like the head judge? Some of the other things is they might ask you is, are they in game three? Like, does it look like it's going to use the whole time? So they might ask, what are life totals? Like, you could probably figure out a winner, but that doesn't really do a whole lot. So you'll end up using that just to contextually tell the head judge, like how much time they're going to need.
Another match that might have a long extension because they've had 3 5-minute calls,
Yes.
might be that's a red flag right there, because odds are good they're going to have a fourth 5-minute call.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or even just things like, are they in their combo turn? Like, speaking once again from the Amulet side, Amulet is going to combo off at some point in those turns, likely, because they're just going to try and go for it. And if they're in the combo turn, you can pretty much guarantee that match is going to end during that turn at some point, or they're just going to lose because they didn't do the thing during the combo turn, and now the other person is just going to steamroll them.
I think one of the funniest things that I've said is like, why is that match not done yet? And the answer I gave was, Titan player got Emrakulled, and the Emrakul player is just like trying to figure out how the deck, how to not have the deck work, because they're just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, well, don't do it faster.
Yeah.
Just.
Oh, I don't envy that player at all.
Yeah. So there's a lot to this category in general, but like you will get better at it the more you do end of round, and you'll actually start to see these certain things. And I always tell my end of round team every single morning before we begin, I say the first few rounds are going to be rough. There's going to be a lot of learning for everyone, and by the end of the day, we will be a machine that will be threaded along and successful. So the same thing with this. It just requires you to be the lead multiple times and for different events of different sizes, and just learn from it. You want to get a communication, I guess?
Sure.
Yeah.
This is your section, man.
Oh, this is my
What you wanna
section.
talk about?
Okay.
Yeah, what you wanna talk about?
I only put one little note at the end. This is all you.
Oh,
bro.
I see. Yeah. Okay, I'll just keep rolling. So communication is the next point. Communication is related to team leading, but it's super important both to communicate to the head judges, but also to communicate to the team leads. So communicating to the team leads, the other team leads specifically, knowing what's the process the feature match team lead is going to do to denote features in Purple Fox, to how are they going to put in the time extensions. Oftentimes, the team lead might communicate to you and say, hey, all the feature matches are done early, so you don't have to worry about our tables. Knowing like deck checks. So oftentimes, what I'll do as a deck check lead is I'll tell, or as a end around lead to the deck check lead, I'll say, hey, if you have the ability to tell me of an impending potential long extension, let me know. So once again, you are predicting something that might delay you longer. And so let's say there is a cheating investigation that is maybe doesn't have a game loss. The deck check lead might send someone out to the end around person to say, hey, we have an ongoing investigation of 18 minutes now, and hopefully we have it wrapped up soon, but just be aware that this is a thing. And then typically I'll ask game loss or no, and they may say yes or no, and they'll say we'll check. But what I will do is when I know that it's done, I will go over there and I will get that information because it is very relevant to me. So talking to the team leads about the structure, talking to the floor judges, you need to properly communicate to the floor judges at the beginning of the morning briefing how you want them to sit at a table. What are their duties and responsibilities when they go and get told to go sit at table 43? What should they do when they leave the match? What are things that they can do to help you? Maybe it's, hey, do you all know how to put time extensions into Purple Fox? If you don't, oftentimes my team can show you, or someone on your team can show you. At 5 minutes left, meet X person over by this point. Like point to a thing and give them a time and say 5 minutes left, go meet over there. It'll help out all be successful because by the time you get down to those last few minutes, everyone on staff is basically the end around team. So
can I jump in
for
just a second?
Yeah.
Where you said communication is huge. There's a thing that you have to do even before you can communicate what you were just talking about, which is plan. Like, do not, if you are end of round lead, do not just plan on, I've got all of round one to communicate my plan to people. No.
Already too late.
Have that. Yeah, you are already too late. Basically, when you walk in the door, if you haven't at least set aside time to talk to the other team leads about what your plan that you have already created is, you've done flubbed it.
Yeah, I usually expect to hear those plans coming up during the head judge's announcements before you break into teams going, and by the way, end of round, tell us what your plan is for today so we're all on the same page, because that's the only time that everybody is all together to get that briefing. And if their plan is just, well, we'll have somebody over here, I go, cool, we're going to have a rocky beginning of end of round.
I really put a lot of stress on my team lead for end of round to communicate a briefing ahead of time. It's not always done, but I really strongly recommend to send out a briefing ahead of time to say, this is how I'm going to run end of round for this head judge, and this is the process that I would like to do. You can keep it very detailed because people might read it, but you want to elaborate on it the morning of, but don't just broadside somebody with like this brand new technique and say, oh, this is what we're going to do. And then secondly, I always say that even if you have a plan, be ready to audible to something like tweaks. You're fine-tuning things to match the needs of the event, because every event size matters, staff size matters. It might completely change. Like for Vegas, they had a plan going into it, and then for round one, we were like, we can't use the plan that the end of round team set up because we just don't have enough people. So we had to completely change. Yeah. And they did. They changed it, and it went a lot better to the best we could, but
yeah. And sometimes even the room is fighting you too. Like sometimes you have a great plan and then you realize, hey, the snake puts like tables 1 through 200 and then like 400 through 600 on one side of the room. And then the other middle part is on the other side of the room. And you have to figure out, how am I sending people around? Like being conscious of how many steps you're sending judges on when you send them to a table is a real thing when you're a point person for end around.
Yeah. I think that wraps up those two for me. And the last kind of thing that I think most head judges are getting better about assigning is doing no-shows. Doing no-shows is typically given to the outside of round one. Round one usually will have a bunch of no-shows throughout the whole tournament, but any round afterwards, I always assign no-shows to the end of round, because you want one or two people to facilitate those, because you never want to be the person to call out ghost tables, and you're calling out a match, a table 577 out of 579, and you're calling them in the last round, and then you have to take the guess of, was this a double no-show? Could be. So I always like to be in charge of making sure.
The no-show looks an awful lot like a ghost.
Yeah, correct. And I've been burned by those multiple times. So one of my things is I always make sure, as the end around lead, even if I'm not assigned to it, I am making sure it gets done.
Now, I will say, if there is a double no-show at table 15,
yes.
What do you think there's an actual double no-show at table 15?
It's a feature match.
It's a feature
Always
match.
A feature match.
That's a thing can also happen is that features don't get marked, and then you sweep by and you mark it empty, and then you call up a feature. It's really funny when the player is like on coverage and you could hear the announcements, and so you can see them react to their names being announced over the microphone.
So what you're saying is communication is important, because yes, knowing that early will help, prevent egg on face later.
Yeah, here's an interesting thing. I've noticed this over time as we have moved. The amount of information that judges need to know.
Oh yeah.
Constantly seems to go up, and just the little bits and pieces of things, just as we add more complexity to events and add more technology, the things that you got to know and the things that you got to keep track of just goes way up.
Marcos, you undo your body language and then.
Oh yeah, for sure. So when we were talking a little bit earlier about when you are the person going to the match and you're sitting down at the match, one thing that you should be very conscious of is your body language. B. Pearl said it best, I think, when he pointed out that judges can be intimidating to a player. Sometimes you might want to use that to your advantage. especially if it's like, hey, you've kind of poked this match to get along with it, and they're getting a little fussy and like, trying to figure out this really deep line, and then just kind of shrugging you off when you're poking to do that. You can absolutely use your body language in a way that you might not normally expect. Like, we often will tell you, hey, don't loom over players. Don't put both your fists on the table edge and lean over and just be watching them as they're playing. Except for when it kind of makes sense to do that. Maybe not that necessarily in-depth, intimidating style, but be aware that your body language can communicate, like, are you done? Are you moving on? And even little subtle things, like, for example, if you see a judge sitting to the left of one player and you're sent to double up on it, you should try to find yourself a diagonal across from that judge. So on the left of the other player. And feel free, when appropriate and when you're trying to get a point across, to communicate with that other judge kind of through the players, where you're going, oh yeah, there's only 2 tables out. Kind of making sure everybody knows this is it. You're kind of holding up the whole event without directly being like, hey, you're responsible for this not turning over, that sort of thing.
I don't necessarily. I will occasionally go up and be like, hey, last match.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like try and keep it casual. But if it's like, this is last 2 or last 3, is probably I wouldn't necessarily know if that's necessary, because the players will pick up what you're putting down.
Yeah. And I think it more depends on the type of match, because, like, for example, I'm often going to talk about tables that are CEDH, and in those kind of situations, you have to be a lot more forceful about what you're trying to get across to them, because they are so in the tank and negotiating and politicking that, like, I will be very deliberate and, like, standing over them, making sure they see I am there to kind of break how focused on their table talk they are, to try and get that match finished.
Can you just take like an iPad sized of whatever screen of whatever you use to record results and just slam it down right in the middle of the table as kind of like, we're in turns. That is time and round.
Oh boy, I
wish
I could
knock
sometimes.
their commanders all over the place.
I have a feeling CEDH players occasionally need, never mind. I'm going to just move on from that.
Prompting.
They need a firm hand sometimes. Okay. They need somebody who can.
Let's move.
That's the chest of problems.
Let's do a few quick hits. Yeah. Things that might happen at end of round, and this is definitely more. This first one definitely more common at your LGS. It's 45 minutes in the round. There's 5 minutes left in the round, and everyone's done playing. What do?
Oh, I flipped that thing. So long as I've got everybody reasonably present, or it's only a few minutes difference, I flip it.
Yeah, take a 5-minute tea break.
No,
take a 5-minute tea break.
If I can get home 5 minutes earlier that night, I'm flipping it.
Flip the round early. Now,
flip it early.
Now, is there a thing that you have to be aware of if you do flip around early? What is that thing?
Judge, now I'm late.
Players in the bathroom. Players getting that slice of pizza 3 stores down. Player is not present. You just have to be aware that happens and make sure that they have a time extension.
Right. They are not tardy. If you said round 1 ends at 1:50 and you start round 2 at 1:42.
Yeah.
If there are players that aren't there, they are not late
until 1:50.
Or the clock doesn't start for them being late until 1:50.
Right.
Okay. All right. Now, what do you do if you can't find a pair of players?
Where are they in the room? Is my first question.
You get on that microphone, or
no.
You have the head judge.
No. Which table number is it? Is it table number 300 out of 310, or is it table number 10 out of 310?
Sure.
Both. Tell me both if it matters.
Both if it matters. If it's the table number 10 out of 310, again, we were talking about it just a few moments ago. It's probably feature match, or it's some other explanation. If it's table 300 out of 310, it might be double no-show, especially if it's round 3 or 4 or 5 later in the day. Those players tend to sit there and say, I don't need to show up. They'll figure it out.
Now let's say you've called and called and called for these players, whether it's in your store or whether it's over the microphone at a convention. You cannot find this pair of players. What do you do?
You mark them both.
At that point,
drop them both.
You mark them both down as dropped, and if they don't show up before the beginning of the next round, then they're gone from the tournament.
What if it's one of the higher tables? Like this is
it doesn't.
Yeah.
You don't there's sometimes that you can assume a double no-show, but sometimes it's just they've wandered off and they're not hearing because the PA system and in that particular case, and you have made a serious good faith effort, and it is not the final round.
They are the last table. You are probably going to just guess.
You're probably just going to guess.
Put in the results
and hope that and
if you have to change it, you're good.
And you've got a 50% chance of being right, and then there are consequences that you have to deal with. Okay. But this is the absolute lastest of all last possible resorts. Okay. Okay. Let's say you come
It always
up.
feels weird when you do that.
I have never had to do that, but it is something that, at a MagicCon, let's say you're doing one of those 30 to 80 player events.
Oh, it happens all the time round 3.
And it could be a little more common there where it's like ticks per win or something like that. It's not like an RC or something like that. And you've made calls, and you're not going to just hold up this 80 player event for this, these two random players. Anyway, okay. You go up to a table and you're like, "Hey, what turn are you guys on? Are you folks on?" And they go, "What? Turns?" And you look and it's -6 on the clock. What do you do?
You are now turn 0. I mean, you have to move it along, and you can't sit there and reconstruct when their round actually ended and how many turns they played. So you have to make a choice, and the choice generally is your turn 0. Let's go.
Yeah, it feels bad if you put them into turn 4. You're like turn 4, because a lot of times the players want to strategically play around those 5 turns.
Yeah.
So knowing when they're going to have to draw potentially matters a lot to their gameplay decisions.
Now, if it's 1 minute you come up, you can be like, "Okay, what's happened?" And they describe things, and you're like, "Okay, your turn 1." Okay, that's acceptable. But yeah, jumping them into you're in turn 5 is real bad. And this kind of illustrates and highlights the importance of making sure that players know that that the round has ended.
Yeah.
All right.
To kind of enhance on a point on the larger event, what I'll tell my sweepers to do is at 0, if they hear time, I literally want them to not spend time talking to players and telling them to submit the results. I want them as fast as they can to just go through their section and just be like turns, and then be like, all right, cool, and go back to doing what they were doing.
Make sure if you're at the LGS, and this is something that's come up recently for me, so I'm just, and this really, it's just such a minor thing, but make sure if you're at the LGS that players understand what turns are. Sometimes you'll get the head nod, but they don't actually get it. Just take the 3 seconds to explain it. It's not hard.
Yeah, and especially at a pre-release.
10K too.
Say that again?
It happened in my 10K too, in Riftbound again. A lot of first-time TCG players are playing Riftbound right now. And so a lot of them don't know what Melee is, what the logistics of a tournament are. And when you say 5 turns, they might think, oh, it's 5 turn cycles where I go and then you go, and then that's 1 turn.
Because that's a thing in Riftbound. Turn cycles is an actual measurement thing in Riftbound.
Yep.
As opposed to turns. Yeah. So terminology can be a little bit different, but definitely, especially with Universes Beyond bringing in fans of other intellectual properties, a lot of people might not understand what turns means. Okay. Let's say players are shuffling up and resolving mulligans while time is called.
Happened to me last week too.
Okay.
Yeah, they just it's
That's it. Thank you.
No, you're not.
No, I don't get to. We don't get to play our 5 turns.
No.
Really?
Because what are you going to do?
We'll
what are you going to do in 2.5 turns, and you're not playing CEDH? You're not going to win. This is a draw.
But
Nope.
Right. The only time you let them play is like when you're in sudden death rules kind of thing,
Sure.
and it's a tie.
Sure.
Okay, let's say let's say you've got a judge call. There's 1 minute remaining on the 1 minute remaining in the clock. You get a judge call, and when you resolve it, there's minus 2 minutes on the clock. So your judge call took 3 minutes. How long of an extension do they get?
1 minute.
What? The judge call was 3 minutes.
But we took away 1 minute of your playing time. Which means you get 1 minute to play, which gives you full 50 minutes, and then 5 turns.
Yeah. So any time that you're doing a judge call that goes over, that's in turns, that doesn't count for the time extension.
Nope.
Okay. And so we'll extend that. There's a judge call while you're in turns.
Well, there's no time extension.
There's no time
Same
extension,
thing.
right?
Leave it.
Okay. Now,
What if there is?
let's make this even more complicated. There's an 8-minute extension. Time has been called. You are 5 minutes into that time extension, and there is a judge call that took, let's say 2 minutes.
This is where I'm going to slot in my little idea of putting the little timer next to the match. If there's a call, I go click, like the feature match sort of thing, and I go yada, 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 and I say, okay, we're about to begin. You guys are going to have, X amount of time left, and hit continue.
Yeah.
So,
Solid.
Yeah. Because what happens is their extension essentially gets paused, but the clock is still ticking up, like the actual round clock is still ticking down, so you can get out of sync. Okay. And then finally, go on.
I was just going to say, as someone who is really bad about training myself to look at the clock, it's super important in this case, when you have an extension past time and there's a call, that you look at the clock.
Yeah. All right. Now, we mentioned once or twice slow play. And there is judges tend to give slow play at the end of rounds. Why is that?
Because you're sitting on a table watching the match, actually literally
Because
watching
you'll literally have players say, oh, good, our time is up. Now I can slow down.
Yep.
Literally will say that out loud because they're rushing to try and get as much into those 15 minutes. And they go, oh, good, now we're in the untimed part.
Yep.
And you're not. You still need to turn the round over. You do not suddenly have infinite time at your disposal.
Yep. The players are not entitled to an 80-minute round. And another thing, just from a judge perspective, when you're floor judging watching Magic and you are walking the floor, if a match is taking a long time, there's actually a tendency for judges to just, I'm bored watching this, and to just move on to the next table instead of recognizing, hey, I'm bored now, maybe slow play. When you are doing end of round and you're there and you're like shackled to that table, right, until they finish, you are much more hyper aware of the amount of time that they are taking. But I don't actually think that players play more slowly more frequently at the end, but I definitely think that its judges are paying a lot more attention at the end.
Yep.
So, okay, is there anything else end of roundy?
Wow, I think we've covered a lot of things.
Yeah. Basically just wanted to reiterate exactly what Charles said there's a lot of things within a round specific at a large event. So I said it multiple times, but it's going to take multiple times for you to get comfortable with a process. And understand we could probably do another 2 or 3 episodes just on how Purple Fox works, how advanced end around techniques. So there's so much to learn. So talking once again to people who do end around frequently is really important. I'm oftentimes very open to talking about end around, specifically different styles and the conclusions I've come to based on doing different techniques. So don't feel bad if you go into a 500-person event and your end around doesn't function to what you think is perfection the first time. Just every single time you do it, learn from it, note it, keep improving, because it is the hardest logistical team specifically at these events compared to the other teams.
I really think it's very fiddly, right? I mean, there's so many different iterations and so many different problems that can make it slightly more complicated for one reason or another. A lot of knobs and dials that can be turned.
Yep, that's a perfect way to put it.
Okay.
Brandon, thank you very much for being on the episode. We really appreciate you taking time out of your week. And I hear a lot of great things that came out of Vegas. So thank you for all the hard work that you did.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Always appreciative about talking end around, and also fulfilling my dream of being on JudgeCast at some point. So
Hey!
it's very much appreciated for the invite. I know when Marcos asked me, I was just like, yeah.
Yeah, you were literally like running from one hall to another. I think you were like trying to get back from break or something. And I was just like, hey, come on, let's talk about end around.
It is hilarious. Okay, so this episode is going to be roughly 2 hours long that we spent talking about, like a process that players are barely even aware. It's just the judge pestering me to get my results in. Like, God, just give me a minute. I'm gonna do it.
I will say that our turnover times cumulative together over the 9 rounds probably was about 2 hours. So
yeah. So they did a study back when Wizards liked judges and shared information with us. What we found out was out of the large events, the ones that rated the highest in player satisfaction were the ones with the shortest turnover times, and the ones that were rated the least popular, the least liked, were the ones with long turnover times. Yeah, it's like it basically just boils down to whether or not players have a good time is just how long they have to spend wait. Like there is, I don't want to say that's all that it boils down to, but the correlation was so strong that other stuff almost doesn't matter.
I believe that entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just shaving off and think about it, like, again, judges, we stress like a minute here, 2 minutes there kind of thing. And you might question, like, why are we being so pedantic about that? Is because those little things add up. Okay. And, when Titan Amulet itself can add like 45 to 50 minutes to an event just because it's the last match consistently by like an extra 5 to 10 minutes over 9 rounds, that adds up. So Amulet,
and
not Titan Amulet.
Stop talking down about my boy.
What? I love it. That's the type of deck that I would play.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, I love that deck. I want to play that kind of deck. The problem is I don't want to be one of those people that plays that deck.
Hey, I resemble that remark.
What? Yeah, it's because they slow events down, and that ain't what I'm about.
All right, that's our episode tonight. Join us next time as we talk about, well, probably a few random topics as we close out the year of judging and we look back at what 2025 was and what we expect out of 2026. Until then, you can send us an email at judgecast@gmail.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on BlueSky at judgecast.bsky.social and on Twitter at JudgeCast. Don't forget to check out our show notes for these links and more, including our YouTube channel where you can find this podcast and our L1 Essentials series. While you're at it, hop onto our Discord server for judges new and old, fans, and anyone who supports the judging community. I'm Charles Featherer, and I keep it fair.
I'm Marcos Sanchez, and I keep it fun.
I'm Bryan Perlman, and hey, can I get you to go ahead and enter your result, please? Thanks.